You are listening to the Body Charge podcast, and I'm your host, Sandy Sanderson. Welcome to the Body Charge podcast. Today's topic is getting exactly what you need in life via meditation. Have you heard a lot about meditation, tried it, but can't get into it? Did you know that it can be adapted to suit individual needs and lifestyle? It can help us move into the slipstream of life, efficiently achieving our hopes and dreams to enjoy the game of life. It can help us harness the brain's capacity to tap into knowledge, creativity, intuition, better health, and more. My special guest today is Jeff Patterson, meditation instructor and author of the Yielding Warrior book, as well as hundreds of instructional videos. With over 36 years of experience working with thousands of students globally, Jeff offers very practical strategies to harness your inner strength and best potential. So welcome, Jeff. Lovely to have you on our podcast.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
I'm so excited about our conversation today because I meditate myself. I did the Vipassana meditation course back in 2007, and it marked a big turning point in my life. When you understand how to use a particular tool and it works for you and it's predictable how well it works, it's really exciting because it gives us a sense of control, that we're not just passengers in life, that we have vital input, and we can kind of, make things happen much better than if we weren't meditating. So I'm really excited to ask you first, what are the main benefits of meditation? Can you just, in your experience, what you found most beneficial for the people that you work with?
I've been teaching the meditative arts now for 30 years, and I've had, even just here in my academy, over 26,000 students come through the academy. And I've literally heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives. Anything from working on improving their mobility and their health and their longevity to stress reduction, dealing with panic and anxiety attacks. Other people using it to help with sickness and ailments that they may have, working on different therapies for bodily injuries, depending on, back injuries, knee injuries, different rehab exercises that are come along with the practice. And then just mindset training to help with your focus and improve your performance if you're an athlete or an artist and wanting to improve your present state of mind and your awareness. So there's literally just hundreds of stories on people that have used the meditative arts to see amazing benefits.
So it's very, very physical, actually. A lot of people, I think, they don't know enough about it, think it's just your imagination, which is part of it too, but it's not all your imagination. I feel it's tapping into something bigger and greater, and it's really activating the brain in very physical areas that actually make the brain work better. Can you explain a little bit more about this process, how it works for us physically, how we can help improve our body's health, for instance, because that's a very physical thing?
So with any meditative practice, whether you're doing a sitting meditation, a standing meditation, a movement practice like Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga, whatever it is, there's what I call the five regulations. And these are five fundamental principles that are kind of like the pillars and the foundation of any meditation practice. And when you understand these, you can see how it can benefit in so many different areas. And so the five regulations are regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. And briefly, I'll talk a little bit about all five of them. So regulating the body, which is where we usually begin, is great because it's one of the easiest things to do. What I mean by regulating the body is Think about a time when maybe you're sitting down at your computer and you've been there 3 or 4 hours and your shoulders are slumping forward and you're feeling
Yeah.
pretty lethargic and low
Mm.
on energy and maybe even getting a sore neck. And then think about another time when maybe the most important person in your world walks into the room and your body perks up and you feel great, like you're just on top of the world. Well, we are in control of these two different energies 100% of the time, every day. And just the simple idea of learning how to regulate our skeletal alignment and our muscular tension in the body can make huge energetic state changes in our physical body, our mental awareness, and our emotions. And so this is the first regulation. And with consistent effort, you can see a lot of change from this one regulation in a short amount of time, 30 to 60 days of consistent effort with this, and you'll notice some huge changes. Then the next pillar is regulating the breath. And this is a lot deeper topic and something that if you get into the meditative arts, will be studying this for the rest of your life. Qigong is often referred to as the science of the breath because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies when we start talking about different meditation practices. Now, we kind of broadly categorize them into yin methods and yang methods. And yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style of meditations, things that help bring that energy inward. And what I mean by yin breath is if you ever listen to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing our conscious mind into our subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so, if we want to emulate this style of energy cultivation in our meditation practice, we can lengthen the inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale, and do shorter exhales to help bring that energy inward. And this is great for stress reduction, for anxiety attacks, for improving our focus. There's a lot of different ways that we could use this style of breathing to positively influence in many ways. Then there's the yang side of the breath, and the yang side of the breath is more aggressive. It's kind of like if you've ever had to push your car, or you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to exhale, put tension in the breath, maybe even make it audible. And when we can start learning how to use the breath as a strategy, and in Chinese philosophy, they call this balancing the kan and li, or the water and fire, it teaches us how to have the tools to adjust our physical, mental, and emotional outcomes throughout the day. And this is extremely powerful because we all go through the day with emotional ups and downs. Some of us may be a little more like a roller coaster, and others may be a little more balanced. But wherever you fall into that spectrum, when you start seeing yourself start to get excited, we can use the yin breath to help bring us back down. And when you see yourself starting to feel a little depleted, we can use the yang side of the breath to bring us back up. Now you can find more balance throughout the day rather than being on this roller coaster ride.
Yes,
Then
I'll just interject very quickly here about
sure.
what came to mind when you were talking about the yang breath. It reminded me of childbirth or dealing with pain. You kind of push that breath out and you focus on that breath, and it helps you deal with the urgency of a matter, or the pain. You can use breath to mitigate the effect or the intensity of pain, which I find quite fascinating, because it gives us a level of control which takes some of the stress out of it. Would you agree with that?
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. And, a lot of times when we start talking about breath work, people get a little bit reserved and say, that's dangerous to do things with the breath. But what we don't realize sometimes is that we do these different styles of breathing all day, every day. You think about when you laugh, ha, 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 you're doing a
Mm.
yang breath. And that's why when you laugh for a long time, you get hot and you start to sweat. Or when you cry, you start to get cold and get the chills. And if you cry for a long time and start to get depressed, it can lead to sickness and illness. And so, just understanding that this is just how we are as human beings, we can use these different strategies to help us get different outcomes.
And when we feel very stressed or fearful, the breath gets very shallow and fast, doesn't it? And it kind of runs away, and we feel helpless. But when we take control back of the breath, we take control back, and then we're not helpless anymore. We can navigate, so steer back to the path, or in the zone. I like to call it being in the
Yeah.
zone. When you're in the zone, like an athlete getting over that high jump, and they do a lot of this meditative mind work because they have to imagine themselves getting over that bar without touching it. That requires a lot of being in the zone, in that magic point where everything works perfectly. And that's what meditation can help us to do, right? To help us navigate to that perfect zone.
Yeah, you know, a lot of athletes these days, professional athletes, are turning to the meditative arts to help improve their performance. Um, and and so along with breath, you know, the next pillar in the practice is regulating the mind. And just as with the breath, it's a lifetime journey learning how to work with the mind. You know, one of the most common things I'll hear people say that turn to the meditative arts, they'll say, I tried that before, but it just didn't work for me. I couldn't quiet the mind. And somewhere along the way, people got this misconception that in order to be successful with meditation, you need to be in this state of nirvana and this blissful place where nothing bothers you. And you know, it couldn't be further from the truth. You know, I've spent the last 36 years of my life traveling around the world, training with meditation teachers from all over the planet. And I've met some amazing meditation practitioners. And I have never once met anybody that doesn't get distracted. You know, we all do. It's just part of humanity. And so
Yep.
when you can make this mindset shift and understand that that's not the goal or the thing that we have to accomplish,
It's not
we can
failure.
real it's not at all, yeah, and so when we understand that, we get a lot more out of the practice, and, you know, if you're sitting for 20 minutes or an hour or whatever that is for you, or maybe you're doing a movement practice like Tai Chi or Qigong, and you get distracted 50 times during that session, every time you get distracted, you recognize the distraction, you use your posture, your breath, your movement, if it's a movement practice, to help bring you back to center, and now you just got 50 repetitions of how to come out of distraction and back to focus. And if you do that every day, every month, every year, you start to become unshakable and nothing can throw you off your center. And you have the ability when somebody says something to kind of unsettle you, or maybe you have a stressful day at work, now you have the tools to come back and find that center focus, which is huge. And this is part of what we call regulating the mind. And you know, there's a story that I really enjoy about these two monks, and they're walking down this dirt road after a huge rainstorm, and everything's muddy everywhere. And they come up to this big mud puddle, and there's this beautiful little girl standing on the other side in a white dress, and she's crying. And the older monk yells across the puddle and says, is there anything we can do to help? Are you okay? And she says, I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty. So the older monk, he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle, and he picks up the girl, puts her on his back, and takes her to the other side and sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking down the road for a couple miles. And finally, the younger monk is just furious, and he says, you know, we're not supposed to touch girls, but yet you did back there at the puddle. And the older monk looks down at him and says, you're still thinking about that girl? I left her back there at the puddle. You know, and how many times in life do
Yeah.
we get 2 miles down the muddy road before we finally let something go or even recognize the imbalance? And so regulating the mind is a huge, important part of your meditation journey.
And I found that meditation helps us to become the observer, that without that, people cannot observe their own bodily functions, their own autonomic system. But meditation teaches us to be separate from that. So when you have an emotional reaction or a stress reaction or something that gets you out of balance and makes you just feel bad, you can then observe it and start to analyze and go, well, why did I feel bad about that? And why did that happen? And you come in and you start to take control, like there's something other that becomes the boss of your autonomic system, right?
Yes, having that awareness and that ability to recognize those imbalances when they first happen is a very important part of the training. And that awareness is something that we miss, you know, without doing a meditation practice. So often we get kind of just off on our day-to-day things, and, we've got the cell phones and computers and distractions here and there, and
We're
when we don't really
passengers.
take yeah, we don't take the time to really connect with who we are, we miss out on so much, and so it is very valuable in that aspect.
So with you going back to what you were saying about distractions and that being a normal thing, and it's a discipline to practice and practice, reining it back in. I did some work in the 90s with the late Stuart Wilde, and he taught that your ego mind is the one that keeps chattering at you about stuff and distracting you. He said you've got to treat it like a dog, like a puppy dog, and tell it to go and sit in the corner. So I found this really helpful as a visual thing. Sit in the corner and obey, because we need our ego. We need that part of the mind, or the left brain, if you like, but it needs to be subservient to the greater regulator, the who we are, to be in control. We don't want that part of the brain to dictate where we're going, what we're doing, how we're reacting, because then we have no control. So it's like the discipline helps us train that little ego dog to sit in the corner and obey, and then serve us better to get stuff done, obeying what the higher mind or the higher self, where that dictates where the pathway is for us. So I find it very useful to use analogies, and the practice of meditation also gives us great creativity. I don't know what a whole bunch of other people think, but in my case, I found it opened up my mind, my brain, like a big vessel. And in the process of meditation, I can download so many creative problem-solving ideas effortlessly. I just open up in that space and down it, and then it comes down, it downloads. And it's just a wonderful feeling without the stress and the effort and the suffering, where you feel you have to solve a problem and you've got to push through it, and it's kind of an agony, and you're under stress, it has to be done by a certain time. With meditation, you can bypass all that struggling, and you can just be in that open space without the stress, and allow the solution just to drop in, right?
Yeah, one of the main things that people turn to meditative arts for is for dealing with stress, and in recognizing those imbalances is key, and coming back to the five regulations we were talking about, we touched on the first three. So we talked about regulating the body, regulating the breath, and regulating the mind. Well, when you start understanding how to use these and come to a competent level in these three, then we have the tools to go into the fourth regulation, which is regulating the energy. And regulating the energy is a very deep subject. It's something that we could talk on for hours. But the basic idea of regulating the energy is learning how to bring that energy inward, or extend it outward, or circulate it in the body to get different outcomes. And so once we have learned how to do that, now we've got a world of different possibilities of how we can use the different meditation practices. And, within these meditation practices, some people come to the practice for improving their performance, others for the therapeutic benefits, others for the medical side of the training, others for the philosophical and the mental side of the training, and then lastly for the spiritual side of the training. And these fundamental foundation principles from the five regulations are needed in any one of those paths that you follow. And so it's real important to have a clear understanding of that when you're starting to build an evolving life practice around meditation, because without that, you're kind of like swinging in the dark. I see so many people sometimes come into the academy and they'll tell me that, oh, I listened to this app or I watched this video. And, the meditative arts are often called the internal arts for a reason. And so if every time you meditate and you do your ritual practice, you're listening to an audio or watching a video, you're really kind of missing out. Those things are great tools to help us learn things, especially if we don't have a teacher that we have available around us. But when you're doing your ritual practice, you want to turn inward and really kind of look inside and pay attention to that awareness and that sensitivity. And then if you do that and you have a solid ritual practice that you do every day, then you could integrate some active practices throughout the day, which are great tools to kind of help make it more of a way of life, because meditation is not meant to be a hobby that we do once or twice, here and there. It's meant to be
Yes.
something that we live. And so
Mm.
these active practices help us stay in the present moment, and we can do them when we're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store, which makes it really accessible and easy to use. And then lastly, we have philosophical practices, which can be intertwined in the active or ritual based practices. And when we have an understanding of that, then we start evolving our practice and using it for whatever our desired outcome is.
Yes, I use it with the dentist very successfully to get to the other side and make the time go faster because I can put my mind somewhere else, which is very helpful when you have to get through something very yucky or unpleasant. So with the meditation, the inner silence is very, very important because when you have that stillness and that silence and that inner space, that's when the well bubbles up and over. The well of who you are starts to come up and out because you've cut off all the distractions. The most benefit I get from a distraction when I did the Vipassana meditation course, that you focus a lot on observing what's happening in the body. There's a tickle here, or it's a bit hot over there, or you start to focus on your breathing and what's happening with the heart and anything that the body is doing in the autonomic system. If you occupy your left brain on what's actually going on in the body, it allows you to move into that deep well of empty space where you are much more easily, because you've got that left brain a little bit distracted with observing the body. So it's like a very useful chore to start training to observe your breathing and other things that are happening in the body. And it helps to get rid of stress, definitely. When we don't have so much stress, we preserve our magnesium levels, and magnesium deficiency is a downward spiral because it causes more and more magnesium loss under stress. So we have to have, I think, an holistic approach where we're trying to conserve magnesium loss for better health. At the same time, we have to capture that runaway stress when it happens, using the process of mind and breathing and everything that you mentioned in a holistic way. It's learning how to drive this body vehicle, isn't it? We're practically going back to school, to square one, to learn how to exist and how to live a healthy, well, and happy life. I wish they would teach it in every public school because I think that would give kids a way better head start in life than anything else. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think meditation, if it was commonly practiced around the world, it would be a much better place. It just makes you more considerate, more present, more aware. There's so many concepts in the meditative arts that, if applied, can change your life in many ways. In my most recent book, The Yielding Warrior, I break down one of the concepts in meditation called yielding, that we have, where we use physical, mental, and emotional yielding. And understanding this basic concept, this is one thing that we could apply in 1,000 different places in our life. And briefly, I'll kind of show you what those
Is
are.
that is
So,
that is that like
phys-
taking a pause when something's happened, rather than reacting to it straight away mindlessly? You take a pause and you yield. Is that what you mean? Can you explain
So
that?
so there's three different kinds of yielding. So there's physical yielding, which is the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And now I can respond with less effort. So I'm not trying to butt heads with you. And this is great for any kind of athlete who, there's many times where, and you're in sport, you come up against people who are bigger and stronger than you. Now, in order to be good, at physical yielding. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. Body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present.
Like in
Now,
the
while this
martial
is a
arts. Yep.
in any physical activity, yes.
Mhm.
And so if, while this may take a lifetime to master these skills, the great thing is from day one, by integrating the meditative practices into your life, you start to become more aware of these things internally. And when you start to see them more clearly in yourself, you also start to see them more clearly in other people, which is where it starts to become pretty interesting because if you and I are having a conversation and I say something that unsettles you and I pick up on it from that first sign of imbalance, it's a lot easier to adjust the conversation and keep us in a harmonious path. Now, this is beneficial in our relationships in business and sales and negotiations. It teaches us how to guide these conversations to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. And this is what I
With more
call mental yielding.
sensitivity. More
More
sensitivity.
sensitivity and
Yeah.
awareness and strategy. I mean, there's many things, yeah. And then the last pillar is emotional yielding, and emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but it's with your own interpersonal conflicts. So we think about oftentimes something happens to us and we respond and we go down this path and we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with the meditative arts and our ability to be more present, oftentimes we can set back and analyze the scenario and be more in tune and in time with what's going on and make a more educated choice that saves us a lot of heartache on the other side. And, I've been explaining this idea of yielding now for over 30 years running this academy here. And one of the most common things I'll hear people say is, yielding makes a lot of sense. In fact, I do that all the time. And while I would agree, I think everybody does some degree of yielding all the time. It's kind
Intuitively.
of
Yeah.
it's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, I guarantee you that person would see more about the series of events and the timeline that I know at least that I would have no clue of. And the meditative arts helps us see things inside of ourselves and inside of other people that I truly believe most people will go through life and never have a clue of unless they have this kind of practice in their life.
Yes. So it's about developing that sensitivity that helps relationships and communications because, most of the wars, on the planet are coming down to, problems with communication and with assumptions and with, getting the message wrong. And people assuming that there's a big boogeyman out there, but they haven't got it right. The boogeyman is more in their mind than anywhere else. And the beauty about meditation is it helps us to tap into the reality better. We can see situations the way they are in truth, rather than this overlay of fiction and assumption that's not right, that doesn't serve us. So at the end of the day, to have a better life, we need to be more in touch with the truth and how things are and what is. Meditation helps develop the mind, the brain to navigate to that space where we feel we have that gut feel of this is right. I know it 100%. And we can make better decisions. We can reevaluate. We can weigh up the pros and the cons. And then with our reasoning mind, decide what the best course of action is. So that's what separates humanity, isn't it? That reasoning part of the brain that we've been gifted with, the prefrontal lobe, as opposed to the limbic reactive part of the brain that's very primitive. We need to learn to control that with our reasoning part, but we can't do it when we're under a lot of stress. So this is about learning the tools about how to run your physical body like driving the car, avoiding the accelerator too fast or too slow, just working that body to find the best pathway. So your book sounds so interesting. Where can people find you and perhaps purchase the book or learn more about what you do?
Yeah, so right now I'm giving away a free copy of the book. If you go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book, you just pay for shipping and handling, and we'll send you a free copy of the book, or you can also download it there. If you're interested in checking out my online training programs, you can go to theyieldingwarrior.com and learn how to build an evolving life practice with the meditative arts. And I also have a teacher training program up there for anybody out there who maybe has a yoga studio or a martial arts studio, or maybe they're a life coach and they want to learn how to hand down the meditative arts and understand how kind of the science works behind them, so they know how to prescribe different things for people to give them different outcomes. And so it's a great resource.
That is very, very worthy. We need more good teachers out there because this is such a vital thing to know how to do. It's like, once you've started to embark on this journey to use the discipline in life, you really experience life in a very different way, in a much better way, in a much pleasurable way, very satisfying, and you feel more freedom in life because you've got the tools to make things happen, to improve anything you put your mind to is just so wonderfully empowering. And I really want to thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with with us today and with the world, because we need to have more teachers, more people like you out there teaching this process. I think that would turn humanity around in a big way, rather than going down a more negative path, which I don't think anyone really wants. But I think a lot of people don't know how to change it. They feel disempowered. So this is a way to become empowered, right?
The meditative arts can definitely help. The Dalai Lama once said that everybody should meditate for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then you should meditate for an hour. And I love that saying, and that I truly believe that if everybody spent a little bit of time just staying connected to who we really are, the world would be a much better place.
Yeah, I like the way you said even 5 minutes standing in line somewhere. I do it if I'm a passenger in a car on the way somewhere, or just in the twilight hour of the morning when you're in that half asleep, half awake state. You're just coming out of that sleep. The twilight zone, I find really clear and beautiful, beautiful, calming space where my mind just opens up and I get a focus on what are the important things that I need to put my mind on for the day. It really helps clear everything away, all the debris, and helps create a better path in your own mind of what needs to be done, what's more important than something else. And you're not like in a tangled mess. Everything is combed out and nicely clarified. So I hope lots of people take this message forward and, have a go. And, if you're not sure or you're having some kind of issues or can't get there, reach out for teachers, read the book, go online and, start learning, because it's just a wonderful thing to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you liked this conversation and will share it with others. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to listen to other Body Charge conversations, click like, subscribe, the bell icon, and click all notifications. Subscribe to our newsletter to get updates on blogs, podcasts, videos, and Magnesium special offers at electromagnesium.com.au. Relax, recharge, and recover.